Well, hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Speak Out Loud
Hey,
podcast
you guys.
and Speak Out Loud YouTube channel. So, both of our platforms now that we are releasing this content on, and we are really excited that you are with us tonight and today, or wherever you're joining and listening in. And we have two special guests, and we are really excited for you to get to meet them. If you're watching with us, you can see them, Amanda and Kinzley Wright. So, welcome, Amanda and Kinzley, and thank you for joining us. And if you don't know, Amanda's mom and Kinsley's daughter. And so that's going to be important for the content we dive into in the interview we have here in a minute. But we're going to let them introduce themselves in just a second. But Stacy, our history with Amanda and Kinzley goes back a long ways.
Oh, yeah.
To when Amanda was younger than Kinzley even. So we have known them a long time and Amanda's family a long time. Actually, Amanda's dad, Ray, is who brought us to Oklahoma City. We served on church staff together. And we all affectionately call him Raybo. I don't know, Kinzley, do you call your granddad Raybo?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay. So there's a lot of great Raybo stories out there. And we could spend this whole podcast telling. I'm sure your granddad's going to be listening to this at some point, Kinzley, so we could share them. But before we dive in, do you have a Raybo story you want to tell us about your granddad?
Where would you even start? He last fall at fall retreat, he whipped out the old grandpa teeth just so he could walk around and find Kinzley and all her friends with the old grandpa teeth. And make sure everyone knew I'm her grandpa.
They're like,
my gosh,
stuff where there's like multiple teeth missing and the teeth are like rotten.
That's so fun. What'd you do when you saw him walking around? Did you just laugh?
I just laughed.
She loved
You know not to get embarrassed about it anymore. He's just fun.
Yeah.
Well, Ray was our pastor. Stacy and I were youth pastors, and but Ray's been a youth pastor at heart probably since he was 22 years old, and he still has that heartbeat in him for fun, but also for other people.
What?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Such a great song.
Well, we are blessed by him, by your family, Amanda, and we are really thrilled to get to have you join us tonight. But let us turn it over to you. Share a little bit about yourselves, kind of where you are in life, what your lives look like. Kinzley, kind of what your life looks like. I know as a teenager today. Just tell a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So we, I guess we have known you guys since I was probably first grade or somewhere around there. And for anyone listening, Doug was my youth pastor all growing up at youth group. And so, yeah, we go way back with Doug and Stacy, huge part of our family story. But right now we live out in the northwest side of Yukon. And Kinzley's my oldest. She was a surprise in college and God has totally used her as part of my
Absolutely.
story.
Absolutely.
And, she's just been the biggest blessing to me. She's 13, so we are in the beginning stages of all things teenager.
How's it going, Kinzley?
Navigating those waters. And then we have my husband and I have a son and a daughter together. JJ's 7 and Ivy's 6. So they were bam, bam, thank you, ma'am.
Oh, yeah.
Let's wrap it up and tie a bow on it and call it good.
Well, I know that life is very full for you all. And Kinzley, one of the things it's full of is softball, among other things. So you are a big softball player. So tell us a little bit about softball for you and just what that looks like.
Okay, so it's like one of those sports that you're always constantly thinking about, like what you're doing wrong and what you need to get better at.
Yeah.
And it definitely takes a lot of effort. So if you don't want to get better, it doesn't work out. You have to get outside and work by yourself, and that's really hard.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then
she's a good little baller. She plays middle infield, and she's kind of played around at third base some, and she's become a good little player.
Yeah, that's where the action is big time. That's fantastic. That's awesome. Doug was a baseball player. And so one thing I've learned is that if he throws something like in fun, don't worry, he doesn't like throw things at me, but if he throws something, I better catch it, because when you marry a baseball player, somebody who plays softball, if you're in the same room with them, you better catch it.
I did say on that note, I told Kinzley, because we've been talking about boys and who the type of boys that interest her and stuff like that. And it reminded me of when I was in college. It was my freshman year, I think. And I was with a group of friends that I had had since high school.
Gosh.
And we were hanging out outside. Our fraternity and sorority houses were right across from each other. We were all hanging outside, throwing footballs, playing catch. And I grew up with brothers that played baseball. I played softball. And so
Mhm.
I know how to throw a ball. Well, this guy that was interested in me was playing catch with me, and he could not throw a ball. And I was immediately, no,
Nope.
I'm out.
That was it.
That was an ick for me. So
You are
yeah,
disqualified.
I actually laughed and I looked at my friend and I said, "Why is he throwing the ball like that?" And he was like, "I think that's just how he throws." So we have rule. We know he has to be able to throw a ball.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's very important.
Well, Kinsley, you certainly come from a long line with your mom and your uncles and your granddad of baseball players and softball players and athletes. So I know it's part of your family heritage, and I'm thrilled to get to see all we see on Facebook about all you're doing and getting to do. Well, and Amanda, anything else you want to share about your family, yourself? I know work and career, and just you're very involved in your church. I know that from
Yes.
what we see, and you've told us.
Mm.
Yes. So I met my husband. We were both working at Chesapeake, and let's see, we met back in 2013, I believe, and kind of casually dated, and parted ways, then started dating again sometime later, got engaged, got married in 2016. She was about 5. I think you were about to be 5 when we got married. And then she was our flower girl. She was the cutest little flower
Oh,
girl.
I know. She looked
I
precious.
forgot to put her shoes on her that day because it was so chaotic. So she was barefoot the whole day. Her dress covered it. But it was such a fun, special day. I actually have my dad had given me a necklace with a tattoo of a key on it when she was just a couple months old, and wrote this really sweet letter to go with it about how he was going to hold the key to my heart until the right man came into my life and into her
Oh,
life. And so on our wedding day, my dad gave that key. Well, he had given it to Jason symbolically during the ceremony. And it was just a really sweet time. It was a very special day for all of us, uniting as a
yeah.
family. And so we actually still work in oil and gas together. We work at a smaller company together.
Mhm.
And so we are with each other a lot. And sometimes we have to be in our separate corners. Um, but it's been really great, and we are just constantly busy with sports. She's softball, other two are in sports every night of the week. It feels like
Yes. My
but
goodness.
and then we attend Faith Church, and we are both involved on the Wednesday nights in the student ministry there.
Mm.
It is an amazing ministry for teenagers in the area. The Wednesday nights that they have are just blow me away, watching the teenagers, how they worship and engage and are just hungry for the Lord.
Mhm.
And there's just nowhere else I would rather have my kids.
Yeah.
And that's been something that we've really, because she's so involved with softball, we've really actually kind of had to make some tough choices. I know I ran into you guys at Qdoba that one time, and we kind of briefly talked about this.
Mhm.
One of her teams that she plays for, they practice on Wednesday nights, and we had to sit down and kind of make a decision. Are we going to make softball or our church family the priority, being in God's house? And we chose to make church a priority on Wednesday nights, and it's really been a blessing for us, and I'm really glad that we've made that decision.
And
Yeah.
back when I was trying out for softball teams and stuff,
Mhm.
made this really good team, but I couldn't play for them because they practice on Wednesday night.
Yes.
Yeah, we've navigated some things about, how to balance that and make tough choices.
Well, and even when you were growing up, Amanda, I can remember those being tough choices for you and your brothers and everything. And it seemed like every choice that y'all made that was pro God, pro choice, choosing church and everything, that God blessed y'all even more, because when you were there, you were very intentional, you were very focused, but you'd also been filled up, being in community with people other than on your teams. And I just always respected that about y'all and everything. So way to go. Way to
Yeah.
go, Kinzley.
Well, and I think that some of the things, Amanda, you and Kinsley are even talking about are forming some of the backdrop from our conversation today, because we're going to be diving into just the stresses, all the different things that families face, and particularly today, young women and teen girls, and challenges that I know parents, Amanda, like you, have to help navigate them through. Before we dive into that conversation, though, Amanda, you've referenced this a couple times as you've shared a little bit of your story with us. I know you've been very open about sharing your story, but I remember there was and we're going to link this in the show notes for people that would like to go back and check this out. There was another podcast a few years ago that you had a chance to be on and really share in depth just kind of your story and what that's looked like. And so just briefly mention that, and we'll make sure it's linked and referenced also so that others could go find that if they want to listen to that after this episode too.
The Messy Table. And yes, I will give you guys the link for the episode. But I had the undeserved privilege to be a guest on the Messy Table podcast. My sister-in-law, Christy, was a co-host with me that day, and it was really special. Christy is a labor and delivery nurse, and she actually helped deliver Kinzley. But
Wow.
I got to share my story of how I really walked away from the Lord in the latter years of my college days, really kind of got hung up on making some selfish decisions, chasing after some really fleshly things and trying to fill voids that only God can fill, and ended up with the surprise blessing of Kinzley here and becoming a single mom pretty quickly right out the gate, and all of the challenges that came with that. So I shared a little bit of my story and how the challenges that I walked through, the valleys, the highs in that podcast. And she doesn't even really fully realize it yet, but the Lord has used her story to touch so many lives. And I hope that he continues to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you and I have spoken at something together, Amanda, and you shared and everything, I was just like blown away by how God is using both of you. And you have to make a decision at some point. Am I going to share about the truth about mine and God's relationship? And once you do that, there's really no going back. And when you make that choice, if God leads you to that, not everybody's supposed to talk about what we talk about or anything like that. But when God has you, says, would you please use this story to serve me? I don't know about you, but there's no better peace, because it's not about me. It's about what the Lord is doing in and through things that we might or might not have control over. And look what he gave you. Just this huge, huge gift. Kinzley, he gave you the huge gift of your sweet mama. So it's just precious, all of it. So thank you for sharing some of that and everything, because when I look at your face now, you're just radiant, Amanda. So it's so good to see all that God's doing in and through you guys.
It's an amazing story, amazing journey you guys have been on, and how God has used all of that. And we want to make that accessible to all of our listeners and followers. So we'll connect you to that as well. Today, I want to give the background on this. A couple of weeks ago, Stacy and I were actually in the car driving together, and I had just earlier that day listened to a podcast, and this podcast was speaking particularly about, and I've been out of youth ministry long enough, Amanda, it was actually talking about youth ministry, and I'm like, man, things are really different. And I'm learning a lot. One of the things this podcaster said was, they didn't know a single family with teen girls that was not dealing with some level of mental health challenges. And that just really struck me. And I mentioned to Stacy, I said, it'd be great if we could have a family on, a couple, a mother, daughter, or a couple that are walking that road right now. Because that's not a road we're on. We've raised 2 teen daughters, and they're grown now, and things are different. And so I looked at Stacy, I said, I wonder if Amanda and Kinzley would come on and do this with us. And Stacy thought it was a great idea.
Not even 3 minutes later, I was DMing you, Amanda, because it was just right. It was just, we just knew.
So we're really thrilled that you agreed to this, and we want to hear from both of you and give you both a chance to share. So if you're listening today, you don't know Kinzley, appreciate you coming on as a young kind of teenager, and you're going into what? It's the springtime right now, so you're wrapping up 8th grade or 7th grade? 7th
Yeah.
grade. So you're at the front end of that. And but thank you for being willing to join us, both of you. So I want to start off by asking you guys this question. Middle adolescence has always had its share of probably challenges for both boys and girls. A lot of changes, lots of transitions, lots of pressures and stresses. But it seems like today, certainly, we hear this a lot more, that mental health has become such a more pressing issue. Not to say it's different, guys and girls are always experiencing different things, but I do think there are some unique challenges, particularly for young women. And so I just wanted to ask both of you this and let you speak into this. From what you're seeing, how do you feel like mental health has become? How has it become more difficult, or what change has happened that you're seeing that for you, your friends, other families that you're now having to face?
Take your time.
Well, things are just so different now. Like you said, they are facing so many different challenges than what you saw with us. And she's wanting to answer. I know.
I'm supposed to answer.
Okay. You go right ahead.
Just revise the question for me.
How has it been more challenging in recent years?
Okay, because back then they didn't have all these pretty girls.
Back in the 1900s.
Yeah, they didn't have these pretty girls on the internet, and whenever you're on the internet, you see these pretty girls, and you get like an idea in your mind of what all girls are supposed to look like. So when you look at yourself, you're like, oh, my thighs are too big, my forehead's too big, I don't have a good enough jawline, and
It's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you said something
Because when I go to school, all these kids, they think they're grown up, vaping and dating dating a bunch of people, getting a new girlfriend every 2 weeks. Like it's you're not grown up. They think they're all grown up, but they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Amanda, you could speak into this too from your perspective, because Kinzley, your mom's not as old as you think she is, because we're a lot older than her, and we've seen her when she was your age. So I get it. I get what it's like. And but even from of course, we knew you when you were walking through this road, and there has been a lot of changes. Certainly, things like social media,
Night and day to me.
the connectedness. While your mother had internet, believe it or not, Kinzley, but the level of connectedness and the fact that we now have phones, connected 24/7. You're always connected to the much bigger world around you. Kind of what are you seeing, Amanda? And even as maybe you talk to the parents, what are they facing and wrestling with that you would say, yeah, this is different? And is it mainly coming out in anxiety, or are you seeing other things too that teenage girls are facing?
Yeah, I come from the Oregon Trail days, so it's a totally different world. When we got on the internet, it was the dial-up, and you were learning which berries were poisonous and which were safe to eat. And that was the extent of the internet for us. But I think now one thing that I've noticed is there's a lot of isolating because of technology and how much is at their fingertips. And kids will just draw them away without maybe even realizing it. And they just rather sit in their rooms on their computers or their games or phones or whatever. And I see a lot of isolation, and that makes me sad. Whereas whenever I was growing up, I was out roaming around the neighborhood until dark, and that was my cue to come home. And, things which I know there's some safety precautions that we also have now that we didn't have then either. I would not feel comfortable with her roaming around, like
I wish.
she wishes.
Yeah.
But things are just different. But, but on that flip side, we didn't have the technology, the screens. And so we had more face-to-face interaction, and that was just more fulfilling, I think. And now, I think just the screens have become an addiction almost. And I think that's what has driven, like she was saying, the anxiety, the pressure to compare yourself to this person or that person because of everything they have at their fingertips.
Yeah.
'Cause, like, when I go to school, everyone always has their nose in their phones. They're not focusing on what's going on outside of the stupid school. They're always like, so and so just got
Yeah.
together, so and so said that this and this, and it's just like,
Yeah.
do you even realize that you're just focusing on the stupidest, smallest things in life when there's so many other things you could be talking about, focusing
That's an excellent point. Excellent. Yeah.
And I'm guessing the anxiety, some of the anxiety out of that would come from you're just drawn into so many more things you can't control.
Mhm.
And at some level, while yeah, there's always been gossip and there's been, kids would say things to other kids, but the speed and the access now of it through the phone, through social media, through texting, all the different things, all the ways you can connect. I'm sure the stress is how do you manage that as a student? How do you manage it for you or as a teenager for yourself? But how do you kind of manage just either staying out of it or staying in it and just keeping the balls going? Yeah, it's overwhelming, I'm sure, on top of everything else.
Yeah, we've had, my number one thing is we have a very open line of communication. And I have told her numerous times, nothing is off the table. You are free to talk to me about anything because I would rather you come to me and have a conversation about no matter what it is than someone on your phone. But so that goes for so many things, having that open line of communication. How are you feeling? I actually saw a clip from Pastor Craig Groeschel. He was sharing some advice on how to talk to your teens about what they're going through. And a lot of times it's hard for them to open up just because of their nature. He said one thing that he suggested was asking them about their friends. What are your friends going through? What are some difficult challenges your friends are facing? Because most likely then they are facing the same things. So I think that is a great piece of advice. I ask her about her friends all the time and also just to check and see who is her circle, who are the girls that she's clinging most closely to, asking about their families and are they involved in a church somewhere. I think those are key questions for parents to be asking teenagers.
I think the way you phrase that is so threatening. It just makes for a great conversation instead of it being like, I want to know this, so I'm going to sneak around or I'm going to be defensive with my daughter, and that's going to cause a really bad ripple in our relationship that doesn't have to happen. But that's why we have you on. There are ways to phrase things in order to keep that relationship open so that you do know how Kinzley's doing and you do know kind of the heartbeat of her friends and everything like that. That's hard parenting though. You've decided to do hard parenting even though you may not even realize it, Amanda. I see people who are with their students and their kids, and they do have something in their hand all the time because they want to avoid those conversations. It's a lot of work to get in those conversations at times. It's a lot of, just vulnerability. But when you do that, you get to be a part of Kinzley's life and the truth of her life. And that is amazing.
What and something you just said, Amanda, about how you talk to their friends or ask them about their friends, certainly without naming any names and keeping confidentialities. But when you think in that perspective, for both of you, what would be some of the mental health challenges that you see your peers facing, Kinzley or Amanda? You hear other parents talking about that their kids could be dealing with anxiety. Is it broader than anxiety? What does that look like?
Struggle with like self-harming thoughts, and I try to be the light like when I'm around them and stuff, and try to, you know, invite them to church and stuff because it's hard being around my friends whenever they're having those thoughts, cuz like, you know, what if they influence it on me and then I start having those thoughts, or like they actually end up going through with it and I didn't do anything about it, so then I feel guilty for that, you know.
That is so, so hard, isn't it? It's hard to know how to strike that balance and everything. So when Kinzley comes to you with that, Amanda, what do you say?
That would be really difficult, but I think the first thing that I would do after hugging her and telling her that I love her, no matter what she says, is I think we would just dive into what scripture says, and I would just soak her with God's word. And I've done that before. We've gone down the road of struggling with what we see in the mirror, which kind of can go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of girls struggle with that, even at our age, Stacy. And that's what I did. I just covered her mirror with paper and I just wrote scripture all over it. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing that I can do or say to fix anyone,
Right.
but God's word sure can. And he can pierce the walls of her heart. And I think that's what I would just, no matter what,
No
make
matter
sure
what the situation.
make sure I'm pointing her to Jesus and what his word says about her.
Well, Kinsley, also, when your mom did that to your mirror and everything, how did that make you feel? Did you feel just so loved? Did you feel protected? What did you think?
I felt annoyed.
Fair.
Annoyed,
Totally
right?
fair.
But then I just kind of felt annoyed because I kept trying to tell myself that I wasn't insecure about the way I look, but I really was. So I tried to like deny, but then I really realized that every time I do look in the mirror, my eyes go straight to my legs and I like had to stop doing that. So then kind of grateful for her covering up my mirror.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
almost like we had to do a little detox. We did a phone detox at that same time. And I would say after 24, 48 hours, she seemed like a new kid. Just kind of
Wow.
like a weight had been lifted from her.
Wow.
Well, and that leads into some great conversation because I think, the topic of social media, the topic of access to the smartphone in schools is so prevalent today, and yet I know it's got to be such a difficult decision, conversation, thought process for parents. But from your perspective, any counsel or advice? You talked about doing a phone detox. Anything that you would share that, hey, as you've walked this road, what are you saying about how to negate maybe some of the negative impacts of that? But also, what are some positive things you're seeing? Maybe that certainly whether it be social media or the phone could be bringing to your family, to your life, those sorts of things.
Yeah, we know it's not all bad, but part of the reason why it's not all bad in your life, Kinsley, is because your mom is speaking into that. Am I right on that? Okay.
Yeah, we've made some decisions, some boundaries that we've drawn together. She's only allowed really one social media platform is YouTube. That's the only thing she's allowed to have.
Unfortunately.
And she doesn't like it. Seems like every couple months she's begging for TikTok, and we
Mhm.
put the foot down a while ago and said we're we're not going to allow it. And I know that some families do, and that's totally fine. And I have just made the decision to shield her from as much as possible. She's gonna learn a lot through what she has and at school anyway. And so there's parental controls within her YouTube and screen time settings and all of that and regular phone checks. And so those are some boundaries that we've had to draw together, some expectations that we've talked through together. And there's even some things that I've learned with her that I'll do differently with my younger kids.
Sure.
They probably won't even get phones until they're maybe 16. And even
Yeah.
then it'll probably be something where it's just a communication tool,
Right.
with text and phone calls. And we'll probably push harder on the no social media with them. She was a unique situation where she had to be away from me every other weekend with her dad's family when she was younger. And there were some things there that were concerning that are no longer a problem, but she had to have a form of communication early on. So we kind of had to open that pretty earlier than what we would have liked. But through that, we have learned some things that we will for sure do differently with our other kids.
Mhm.
I will say, are you one of like the only kids in your grade that doesn't have TikTok?
Yeah, I get made fun of about it all the time because I
Mm.
remember recently, me and my friend were making a video, and these girls were making a TikTok right next to us, and they go, "Oh my gosh, are you doing that on YouTube Shorts?" And then they all just start laughing. It's just like
It's so silly.
Yeah, it is.
Sure.
That is so silly. That is, I'm sorry that happened though, Kinsley, but I just I keep going back to the fact of how involved you are with your family and how open y'all are and how important that is. And you know what? Deep down, I bet some of those kids are going, "Gosh, I wish that my parents would not let me do that," even if they don't say that out loud, because it can get so out of control, and then it's hard to pull back, you know. And so, I see what you're saying. It's so hard when you're the only one, perhaps, or you feel like you're the only one. That can feel really hard and bad. But when God gave you your mom for your mom, He absolutely knew what to tell your mom you would need. So I think long term, you're going to look back on this, and I hate to say this. I don't want to sound like, oh, you're going to look back and be so glad. But there are things that you won't have to have gone through because of that. And that is going to be a really big gift to you. And plus, look at you. You have so much going for you and everything. Come on. I just think that you're on the right road.
And as a positive, I think it's built, and you may not even see it, but I see it. I think it's built confidence within her to
Mm-hmm.
be able to just kind of stand firm
Yeah.
and face that and know why. She knows why we don't allow it. And then that's also why we stress the importance of being a part of a church family, because if she can't get that support at school or wherever she goes, she knows she's got
Mhm.
those friends at church that they're going to be the ones that
Mhm.
rally around her and say, "Hey, we're here with you. We support you."
Well, I think that one of the things I'm hearing, Amanda, is really some tremendous intentionality that you and I'm sure your husband and your family are putting into this. And I think that no longer is I think the phone is such a tool that can lead to some mental health challenges that I think
Mhm.
families are going to have to be intentional. I think that
Mhm.
whereas before we just kind of everything went and we just adopted all this new technology and we didn't really know what it would how it impact us and what it would do. There's probably things I'm sure Stacey and I would do different with Shelby and Riley growing up now. Of
Oh,
course, they were
definitely.
a
Yeah.
little bit before quite the revolution of the smartphone and such levels of interconnectedness. But I know there's a great book out there called The Anxious Generation. It came out about a year ago, and it really talks about so many of these with a lot of data, deep dive research into the impacts of this. And one of the things I know it's recommending is just that families have to be intentional. You cannot just let this slide and let what happens, because those are the families that are seeing some real struggles with their teenagers with mental health just because of what all that's bringing into their lives. And the other thing I think is really important that you said, Amanda, is that it's okay for families. It's okay for you to learn as a parent, and you can change something you're doing with your teenager. You can change something for your kids that are teenagers later. You don't have to do it exactly the same way for
Mhm.
everybody. And so, Kinsley, you get to be the guinea pig, right, to
Mhm.
figure out how to parent for your parents. But I think it's
Mhm.
okay, and I think parents need to hear that. If you change something because you learn, that's not treating your children unfairly.
Mhm.
That's just learning, and that's part of
Mhm.
life. And you have that freedom as a parent to do
Mhm.
that. Well, let me ask you this, because you've referenced it several times, and I really appreciate you saying this. But what role do you see? And I'd love for both of you to answer this. Do you see your relationship with God and your connection to your church? What role do you see that playing in protecting your mental health, helping your mental health? How does that play out in your life?
So, whenever I find myself in a problem or struggling, I just remember that God is literally always with me. He's
Mhm.
everywhere. He promises to never leave your side. And since I have such a strong relationship with Him, I can pray to Him in my head and ask Him to help me, or I can point out what I see that's good at the moment. Like focusing on what I see in the moment that God blessed me with and thanking Him for it. My relationship with Him gets even stronger and
Mhm.
it can help me better.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
Man,
on that same
incredible.
note, yeah, on that same note, just knowing that when we go through those valleys, when we feel like we don't even know what's going on upstairs. I think admitting it's okay, I don't have it all figured out, but I know who does. And I
Mhm.
cannot imagine going through some of the things that I've gone through without the hope of Jesus.
Yeah.
And just walking through that feeling so hopeless breaks, and there are people that do, and it just breaks my heart. And just knowing that I had a why, I had just the Lord walking beside me whenever I've gone through the worst things that I went through,
Mhm.
that was not the end of my story. Those things didn't define me. And I think that's what she was saying as well, that, Jesus brings hope whenever we feel like our minds are so underwater, we can't breathe, we can't make sense of things.
Mhm.
And we have a savior that's willing to step in and say, you don't have to know it all.
Mm.
Let me take this burden from you.
Mm.
And I think that's the difference between someone who faces mental health challenges with Jesus and without Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God's all knowing and all doing. So you just have to trust that He's moving, and He has a plan for you. You just have to sit back and wait, because it's worth waiting for.
It's incredible.
That's pretty great. I think Kinzley, you may be in path to preach like your granddad. So that's pretty powerful what you just said.
No, I just feel like that is so ingrained in you, Kinsley, that it just overflows. I mean, that's your truth. That's your story. And I know that there are people who are much older than you who can't say what you're saying and believe it. And you believe it. And that is just amazing.
Well, Kinzley, that was some great advice you just gave. So
Mhm.
I want everybody to hear that, and certainly, I think that's great advice for your peers. But is there any other encouragement you might share for other teenagers, whether you know them or just teenagers you don't know, particularly teenage girls, about how they might protect their mental health? What can they do if they're struggling with their mental health? What might you say to them?
I would tell them to give their life to Christ and give effort to build a relationship with God,
Mhm.
because when you put in effort to build a relationship with God, He sees that, and He hears you building a relationship with Him, and He'll bless you with it. He'll give you blessings. He'll take away your problems, and God, I can't find the words.
It's okay.
It's okay.
No rush.
What you're saying is really good.
Yeah, you're doing incredible.
We talked about like the fruit of the Spirit, like how He provides us with, once you give your life to Him, He provides us with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And all of those feed into these mental health challenges that we see today. And she has this little devotional book that she reads.
I read this every night, and it's basically like God talking to you. And one of the pages that I read, He says that the more effort you put in to build a relationship with Him, the more He'll bless you. So
Yes.
that's what kind of helps me to, build a relationship with Him, so He'll bless me.
Yes.
What
That's
hold that up
right.
again, Kinzley. What's the name of that book or the
It's
devotional?
called Jesus Always by Sarah Young.
Hey,
Yes.
there you go.
Her dad's sweet, sweet girlfriend got her that for Christmas, right?
Mhm.
And she's
Good.
every night, and it's a real sweet gift.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's great.
Kinsley, what's something else? And Amanda, what's something that you really want us to know in this time? What's something y'all want us to know that maybe we haven't touched on the fact that you're saying, Kinsley, that you would desire for everybody to have a relationship with God and experience the blessing that He gives. That's pretty much that's all we could ever ask for. Is there anything you want to add to that, or does that sum it up for you?
You got remember what you were saying, how you said this isn't my home base.
Oh, yeah.
This was a really great.
Okay, we're ready.
No.
Shoot, girl.
I just remember that this earth is not my forever home.
Right?
I keep in mind that heaven is like my home base, right?
Yeah.
And I'm here down on earth on a mission to reach other people and spread the word of God and then retreat back to my home base.
That's very good.
That's,
There you go.
hey,
It's good.
I'm better with word pictures, so you described that to me perfectly because I do better if I can get an example of what somebody means. So that's so good. Thank you for helping me get that. I appreciate that because sometimes we can feel like we are going to be here on earth forever, and that's just not true. That's not the Bible. That's not truth. And so thank you for that so much. My days can feel really long with the kind of mind I have. And if I didn't know, and if I'm not reminded by people like you, Kinzley, this is only a stopover for us, then that can be really more challenging to our minds. And so thank you for that reminder. I really needed that.
Amanda, anything you
When
would
we were
add to what
talking
you've
through,
shared?
yes, when we were talking through that, the scripture came to mind and I read it through, and the message version is really, I really like the message version, and I read it to her, and I'll read it really quickly. It's 2 Corinthians 4:16-18. And it says, "So we're not giving up. How could we? Even though on the outside it often looks like things are falling apart on us, on the inside, where God is making new life, not a day goes by without his unfolding grace. These hard times are small potatoes compared to the coming good times, the lavish celebration prepared for us. There's far more here than meets the eye. The things we see now are here today, gone tomorrow, but the things we can't see now will last forever." And I think, just
Love
like
that.
to follow up with what she said, just reminding ourselves that this is not our home. This is a temporary mission for us, and the Lord's not going to fail us. He's not going to abandon us when we feel like we have no idea what's going on around us or inside us. I mean, and as a parent, I think my advice to other parents out there is just to remember Adam and Eve had the perfect parent and they still royally screwed up.
Yeah, so
Um,
true.
That's a good reminder. Yeah.
I mean, you're doing great. So just don't give up on your kids. I think that's one thing that I've noticed is she responds so well to the intention and to the open communication. And sometimes that means just sitting quietly in the car, but just the presence is needed. And
Well, I think it's important, Amanda, playing off what you just said, it's really important for parents to know and remember in all of human history, this is the first group of children and teenagers that have faced this kind of world like none of us really faced growing up, even with the interconnectedness of social media, the interconnectedness of smartphones, and constantly being online. And so to recognize there has never been a course charted um,
Mhm.
in any of our predecessors on how to deal with these things and how to navigate this and the impact it's going to have. And so it's okay to learn, it's okay to adapt and change. But I think something, Amanda, you said too that's so important, and really Kinsley, you said it too, was how important it is to stay connected to others. Have those conversations, be in community, don't remain isolated, whether it's as a parent on how to navigate this or as a teenager on how to walk through it. Reach out to others, whether it be just friends, people your child is friends with, maybe their parents. If you need professional help, certainly don't hesitate seeking that, because all those resources are there, but we need every one of those resources to help us navigate this uncharted waters. I think that's so important.
One thing I've noticed when I do I follow you, of course, Amanda, on Instagram and stuff. And one thing I've noticed is when you post things about the youth group on Wednesday nights, it's electric. It's on fire. And you got to share recently, and I just listened to it several times because it was such wisdom. And for people your age, Kinsley, to get what your mama is saying and not have to wait until they've only experienced all of it, that's a pretty big deal, isn't it? That's a pretty big gift that your mom was able to share that. We go through really tough times sometimes when we're here. And the fact that you're getting to live with an example of someone who is just saying, you know what, I've been through hard things, but you know what? Look at my life because of God's grace and his mercy in my life. And Kinsley, I can't imagine what your mom's life would be like without you. I mean, you are a precious girl. And I don't want to say this in like a way that is like, way to go. But I'm so proud of you, Kinsley. I'm just so proud of the way that you're walking this out in this life where you do have exposure to things that we didn't have exposure to. And if you ever need to be reminded or encouraged of that, just either one of you, gosh, people need to hear what you're saying. And so you already have a big voice in this world, Kinsley. And I just appreciate what y'all share so much. And we're not quite done, but I just wanted to stop and tell you that.
Well, one of the
Thank
things that
you.
we love to do with all of our guests as we wrap up a podcast is we love to ask them this question. We love to ask, what is giving you hope today? The mission of Speak Out Loud is to share hope and encouragement for those who struggle with mental health and for those who love and support them. And so we love hearing hope stories, and you guys have shared a lot of hope. There's so much hope in your story from beginning to this point, and we've been thrilled to get to just touch on a part of that in this conversation with you. But how would you answer that? What's something in We'll just open that wide open. What's something giving you hope today as you live out your life?
Well, y'all know my story, and I kind of referenced that at the beginning, but for anyone who may not, just quickly, going through the struggle, the challenge of an unplanned pregnancy in college, I walked through some really dark days and dark nights, and I really struggled for months and months with depression, just thinking, my life had completely derailed.
Mm-hmm.
What was my life going to look like? All of a sudden, I thought I was going to be this poor single mom living out on the streets. And of course, I had an amazing family to just rally around me. But there was other things. I struggled with resentment and anger and just forgiveness and with myself too, not necessarily just towards the other person involved, but with myself, just wondering how did I get here? I loved Jesus. I had a relationship with him early on. How did I get here? And just really working through that and not feeding into the lies of the enemy, because I think that's what got me in trouble. Was he really had a field day with my mind back in those days, making me think, yeah, you really did screw up this time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking my dad was pastor at Cherokee Hills still at that point, and I thought, wow, I had just really tanked his ministry. And like God just really totally, just sweetly humbled me into thinking, Amanda, you didn't tank anything. I'm the one that built that ministry. You can't take that.
That's right.
You
Sure.
can't ruin what I've built. And just real sweet with his gentle reminders that what I had done did not define me.
That's
And
right.
I had to really learn. It took months of counseling for me to go through all of those self and those thoughts where I just was so horrible to myself. My counselor had to say, let's take this lie by lie and let's boil it down to what it is. Who told you that? Why do you believe that? And it always ended up being, well, I don't know. And it was just a lie from the enemy. So just walking through those challenges of calling out those lies for what they were. They were lies from the enemy, and working through those and looking back on that from 14 years ago and seeing where God has brought us now. Even
Mm-hmm.
with her dad's family, we have a great relationship. We get along so wonderfully. I consider him a friend. His
Mm-hmm.
his family is like family to us. Her grandpa, her dad's dad, is like another papa to my other two younger kids. They even call him papa. So it's just a real sweet to see how the Lord just intertwined it all and just really truly used it for
Mm-hmm.
good. And, 14 years ago, I thought my world was crashing down on me. And just knowing that God has brought me out of that, giving me the biggest blessing with her. And
Mm-hmm.
not just that, but being able to use that to help give someone a word of encouragement that you can get through it, and here's why, and not to give up.
Yeah.
That's so good. I mean, I'm so thankful you shared all that.
What about you, Kinzley,
Yeah.
on that? Did you have something you wanted
Well,
to say?
I don't know if I can beat that, but I was gonna say that I imagine that God's okay. So I'm a movie, right? My life is a movie,
Right?
and God is my audience. And you know how in movies, like whenever a guy's cheating on a girl, and then the guy is like, with the other girl that he's cheating on his girlfriend with, the audience is like, "Oh, come on, like this and this, he shouldn't be doing that."
Yeah.
I remember that God's my audience of my movie, and I just think to myself, like, what would God be yelling at me, telling me what to do in these situations? And he's all knowing and all doing, so you either have the option to do what you would think he would want you to do, or
Yeah.
do it how
Selfish, yeah.
selfish, be selfish, and fall off the wrong path, and then
Yeah.
but if you imagine God yelling at you, telling you what to do, or as I should say, he's whispering in your ear.
Sometimes we need help.
He's whispering in your ear, telling you what to do, and you just have to listen and trust that he's right, because he's all knowing. Trust that he's right, and that his what he's whispering to you is all going to work out in the end, because he's trying to get you to follow his plan for you.
Gosh, the way you put stuff, I think, is so great because I can understand it, and I know other people can because of the way you explain things. It's so good. You are so full of life, Kinzley, and it's just like you're encouraging me, and your mom is encouraging me so much. God knew exactly who we needed to have on YouTube tonight. He knew exactly who we needed to have.
Thank you.
You're
Well,
welcome.
we certainly appreciate you both, and we love having hope givers on our content with us, and you are both hope givers, both in the story that's brought you to this place, but also in what's happening now and what you're experiencing now, and how you're navigating challenges that Kinzley, like I said, you're the first generation to navigate some of these challenges, and so thank you for giving hope to us, to giving hope to everybody that's watching this tonight or today, wherever they may find themselves. And we're just super thankful for you.
We were guys.
We really appreciate you joining us this evening. We wanted to wrap
for the opportunity.
Oh, yeah,
sure,
definitely.
Sure.
Well, a number of things that Amanda and Kinzley have shared, we're going to make sure they're in the show notes from Amanda's the full link to her full story that she had a chance to share a couple of years ago. Amanda, I'm going to copy and paste and just put the scripture you shared from the Message. I think that's one of our favorite passages, but I think as you read it out of the Message translation, it's so connecting to our hearts and to our spirits, and we want all of our listeners to get to check that out, to read that for themselves. I think that's so powerful. We would just encourage you to connect with Speak Out Loud. You can do that by checking out our website at speakoutloud.me. If you're listening to this on our podcast, we invite you to come follow us on our Speak Out Loud YouTube channel, which is now Speak Out Loud Me. There's no dot in there. Speak Out Loud Me. Hey, if you're watching this on our new YouTube channel, we'd love for you to go check out our podcast, where we've got about 65 plus episodes now of content over the last several years, a library of not only Stacy and I sharing our journey and her story, but also really interviewing and talking with lots and lots of guests, just like Amanda and Kinzley tonight, and guests that may be experts in their family journey, mental health professionals, different ones that have really provided some tremendous insight and encouragement and wisdom. And one of the things I was going to say to you, Amanda, is that my favorite definition of the word encourage is simply just to break it into two parts, to put courage into somebody else. And as I was listening to what you just shared, that synopsis of your story, I can think of how much courage as a young 20s woman you had to find, live out, demonstrate. Now the fruit and the rewards of all that courage. And I thought, how many others listening today are you putting courage into because you found courage and hope And I know what some were some difficult and really dark times and dark days. So
Yeah.
thank you for putting courage into us and to others, and just for providing that this evening.
Kinzley, keep telling people about Jesus, sweet girl. The way you explain him in your life, it's one thing to talk about somebody else's life and go, look at their life, but people are able to look at your life and just go, I want what that sweet girl has. I want that. I want my life to look like that. And who's the key? Jesus is. And you make that very clear when you talk. And I just think if I would have had you as a friend growing up, I would have had so much more depth in my relationship with God. And I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying you are a difference maker and you're hard to find. And so thank you so much for what you do, sweet girl.
That's sweet. Thank you.
Well, we're going to wrap up this evening. Just as you'll find more in the show notes today about how to connect with Stacy and follow Speak Out Loud on the socials. The good use of social media that Stacy's maximizing and putting hope out there every day. You can find access to Stacy's books and how to connect with those on the show notes today and on our website, and other resources that Speak Out Loud provides. But until next time, we thank you guys, Amanda and Kinzley, and thank you for listening and watching. And until next time, we're out for the Speak
Thanks,
Out Loud
you
podcast.
guys.
Thanks, guys.